Maritime Rescue Coordinating Center of the Maritime Administration Department. I am Stephen Thomas, the Director General of the Maritime Administration Department. Sitting here with me is the Honorable Juan Ejel, Minister of Public Works, Vice Subject Minister. And next to him is Honorable Rosenbell, Minister of Home Affairs. We are here this evening we invited you, the media here this evening, to brief you on about the effort on behalf of the state entities of dealing with this vessel. Minister Ejel is going to lead us off in reporting to you about the things we are doing. Minister Ejel.
Thank you very much, DG. Ladies and gentlemen of the media, and by extension, my fellow Guyanese. We are extremely concerned, saddened, and to some extent distressed by information that is available to us and the events since then. The sighting of a vessel of unknown origin and unidentified lifeless bodies in that vessel. About 14:04 or 4 minutes after 2 yesterday afternoon, 112 nautical miles offshore Guyana. This vessel drifting at sea with lifeless bodies on board, of which photographs were taken and sent to us, and we are in possession of those photographs, was taken from MT CMAG 20, motor tug CMAG 20. This is a vessel that is contracted and working with ExxonMobil offshore Guyana. The crew on board MT CMAG 20 informed the Maritime Administration about what they had seen. The Maritime Administration Department requested of the crew to attempt to put a tow line on that boat with the intent of towing it all the way to the seabuoy or the pilot station, which is about 10 miles off of this location. The crew indicated that they needed permission from their principals, and they sought that permission, and by 3 p.m. yesterday afternoon, they had that permission from their principals to grant the request of the Maritime Administration, and that was to get a line and tow the boat to the seaboard. Efforts to carry out that exercise proved unsuccessful. The second request that came from the Maritime Administration was to stay and literally in Guyanese parlance to keep an eye on the boat while we seek to mobilize other assets and resources to get that boat, loosely speaking, captured, attach a tow line, and bring it to the seaboard. By way of communication with the crew on MT CMAG 20, they last sighted the boat at 19:53 last night, 53 minutes after 7 last night. That vessel at the time was approximately 83 miles, nautical miles offshore Guyana, and the location 8 degrees 5.9 minutes north, and that's the latitude, and longitude 57 degrees 20.01 minutes west. And the vessel was drifting at approximately 2.9 knots, and it was moving in a westerly direction. My colleague who is sharing this table with me tonight, the Honorable Robeson Ben, Minister of Home Affairs, in his capacity as Minister and lending support as well to the Maritime Administration and myself as Minister of Public Works, like he has done in many occasions when we had national emergency in the sector, but when it was the bridge, and we do appreciate his support. Joined me and colleagues of the National Emergency Center, where we were at last night, with my colleague, Minister Leonard Indar. And we spent several hours here last night, closer to midnight, exploring every possible option, onshore and offshore, so that we could get the necessary help to capture that boat, get a tow line, and bring it to shore last night. We also contacted our international partners, mainly Suriname, to find out if they had any missing report of a vessel and crew, since here in Guyana we had already done such investigation, and we had discovered we had no crew or boat missing from any of our stakeholders. So we were quite concerned where the vessel was coming from and which country it belonged to, so that we'd be able to get the necessary information and know, once we get the boat captured, who we will need to engage. Last night at about 11 p.m., we were able to make contact with a trawler that was closest to the vicinity in terms of the plotted path, and requested of them to proceed to the last area where the boat was sighted to assist in that regard. This morning, we deployed 2 boats off of the northwest, out of Marijuana. Both boats with a capacity of 2 200 horsepower engines. On board are members of the Coast Guard and the Guyana Police Force, along with locals who are familiar with the sea and who would have traversed that route. This morning, at about 18 minutes after 7, the Guyana Defense Force deployed its first flight out on a reconnaissance mission to help to locate the exact spot to lend support to our boats on water to be able to capture this boat and bring it on board. The Guyana Defense Force returned to the Ogle International Airport at 10:40. More than 3 hours in aerial surveillance for the purpose of refueling. At that time, they had no sighting of the boat. They returned for a second reconnaissance flight, departed at 12:05 this afternoon, and returned at 14:50, 15 minutes after 2 this afternoon. And up until that time, there was no sighting of the boat. The Guyana Defense Force Coast Guard, at approximately 5 o'clock this afternoon, departed for the general area on board a trawler from a private sector stakeholder. They should be on ground by sunlight in the general vicinity, by sunlight in the morning. So we have 3 different dispatches of vessels by way of water, 2 boats off of the northwest, 1 boat that was already out at sea, moving from its position into that general area, and this afternoon a dispatch with the Guyana Defense Force Coast Guard just after 5 o'clock. And we've had 2 aerial surveillance covering about 5 hours of aerial search. We have not had a sighting of that boat. ExxonMobil, which was one of the stakeholders that we worked with last night, their helicopter that went out also conducted surveillance, and they had also deployed 2 other vessels to scope the general area, and they reported to me they had no sightings. As of this afternoon, the last report from the ExxonMobil, that's closer to 4 o'clock, is that they were unsuccessful. Tonight, I said we are distressed because while we had the initial shock of the sighting of that boat, receiving the report as of 4 minutes after 2 yesterday, and our efforts during the afternoon, last sighting 53 minutes after 7 last night, and I need to indicate at that time the weather out at sea was not friendly based upon the reports that we would have received. We are distressed that having had 5 hours of aerial surveillance and the scoping of the general area by 2 fast boats carrying 200 horsepower engines, each which is 400 horsepower. They've gone all the way out, and they've been along the line, I'm told, from Anna Regina all the way out in that general area, which Captain Flores will be able to describe. We haven't had any sightings as yet. My colleague, the Minister of Home Affairs, his people are already engaged, and he could be able to brief you, and we're his people are as it relates to actions that they're taking and will take once we get that boat hooked to another vessel to tow into shore. But unfortunately, it's causing me quite a amount of distress. We have not been able to get that boat attached to a tow line. And we have not been able to see it for the entire day. I'll ask my colleague, Minister Ben, to make some remarks, and then I'll ask Captain Flores to tell you about the team that has been working, and then we will take your questions. Minister.
Thank you, Minister. Just to say that in supporting the effort from the Maritime Administration and the Coast Guard, the police in the Northwest have been on duty offshore today in respect of the search overseas, and in Georgetown and on the coast there were preparations made since last night to receive the vessel given the condition that it was identified to be in, with the proper forensic and other preparations, clothing, and so on, to be able to handle that situation in the best way possible. Of course, if and when we do encounter and retrieve the vessel, and once it is landed, the police will take charge. The forensic persons and the criminal investigation detectives will start their own investigations, and along with the Maritime Administration and others will seek to determine the origin of the vessel, the nationality of the persons as much as possible, and to try to reach out otherwise to any agency or state which may have a relationship with the vessel or with the persons on the vessel, if it is not Guyanese in origin.
Thank you, Minister. Captain Flores has been heading up our team here in the technical area and tracking all the rest of it. So please introduce your team. And
thank you, Minister. This Maritime Rescue Coordinating Center is basically stood up, and they have these national issues. It's manned really by members of the Maritime Administration and the Coast Guard jointly. So while I'm the Director of Maritime Safety, I will have counterpart Commander Adrian McLean, who is the head of operations of the Coast Guard. Adrian, could you stand? He basically is my counterpart coordinator from the Coast Guard. And last night we had a set of assistant coordinators. We have Mr. Troy Clark, our major plotter, who basically is working the computers and plotting the vessel as it moves. We have assistant coordinator last night, also Lieutenant Paul, could you stand? You worked through last night. We have assistant coordinator Marine Officer Hines from Maritime Administration. Mr. Hines, could you stand? Yeah. And we have in the air today, in the 5 hours that the minister spoke about, we had a recce officer, Lieutenant Raul Williams. Raul is somebody at the back. So he was in the air all day today. And we have at sea Lieutenant Rodney, who is heading the surface assets that is at sea tonight as we speak. And that really is a team that is plotting and is planning and is projecting forward the movement of the boat. We're basically logging all the events and so on as it unfolds. That is all from me.
thank you very much, Captain Flores. So we'll now take your questions, ladies and gentlemen of the media. Commander Flores, Minister Morales, Namarawi, Yes, sir. Is it abnormal for, with all your tracking and so on, and all your expertise in land and sea, to actually lose sight of a vessel in these circumstances?
It's not abnormal, because the vessel itself is not a very large vessel. In the pictures you will see, it's not a very large vessel. It's more, I would say, like we call it a bato, the local parlance, a bato kind of vessel. It's fairly deep, but the weather last night was very bad. So we are not saying that it what could experience the weather, but probably could have sunk or become waterlogged with water, and therefore went down. We're not quite sure yet. But the weather was very bad last night, because that is the main reason why the tug couldn't attach the rope last night. It was because of the weather. And we couldn't get quite near to the boat sometimes. So it's not a big boat that we guarantee that will waste program. It's a very small boat.
Your impression is it's a passenger vessel or a cargo vessel?
No, it's
inland vessel.
It looks like a river vessel. Somehow it's ended up offshore. It looks like about, I would say about 20, 25 foot from the pictures we saw. It's an open boat. Has no cover. It's an open boat, a small boat. So, I mean, rain could, water could accumulate in boat, or the waves could accumulate over the sides, depending on the weather. So, not a large boat. You can guarantee that it would not go. I'm not quite sure.
Mr. Thomas, could you say what is it normal for, because you guys said that you reached out to MT CMAC 20 and you gave them some instructions, for want of a better term.
Made a request.
Made a request. Is it normal for requests such as these to not be acted on immediately, based on the guidelines and so on, in issuing these licenses and permits to these vessel operators?
Well, firstly, it's the vessel that is operating offshore, the seaway. She indicated to us about the presence of this vessel in the first instance. As Minister Etienne mentioned, the protocol for the company apparently involves, when they go to engage in any activities, they get permission from the principals, which they subsequently did, and then they tried to connect to the vessel to tow it in. But all the while, they stayed with it, they were drifting with it, and as I said, the end result, as Captain Flores mentioned, they indicated to us that it was too rough for them to go very close and to get a line onto it. But everything that they didn't do anything that contradicts anything that we're aware of, that or that they expected of them. They stayed with the vessel, and until while we on the shore here, trying to muster resources to go out there for them.
I am speaking about immediately seeking to engage. You said, Minister said that they had to get permission from the principal. So I'm asking if, based on the guidelines and that comes with issuance of these licenses and permits to operate, what does the guidelines and so on speak to? That is what I'm trying to find out.
I can't speak for the guidelines in terms of the offshore.
National. This, as a country, when you issue into vessel operators and so on, what do you say to them in the event of things like these?
Well, I can speak from the Maritime Administration perspective on what a normal Maritime Administration would do with respect to ships. All ships are obligated to respond to any distress where persons' lives are in danger. And it's an absolute obligation, they have to. In this case, as I said, they showed pictures whereby the persons were believed to die, but despite that, they stayed with the vessel all the while, and they reported to us as to what they were doing, and until they got permission to engage it, if you will, which they tried to and subsequently failed. So for the maritime perspective, they didn't betray any maritime rules that from our perspective.
Have you got any information from, you saw Suriname, what about Venezuela, anything coming out of Venezuela as far as information about any missing boats? Are you making inquiries?
We don't have any information from Venezuela, and based upon the direction that the boat was coming from, and I don't want to speculate too much here, and depending upon the guidance that I receive from my technical people, this could be a boat that is coming even off of Africa, based upon the direction and how it was drifting. And as you can see, the boat don't have an engine attached to it, and it has a tow line in the front from the pictures. And we are very distressed that a boat without an engine and an active tow line that you can see was the boat towed out and then cut loose. Was it cut from something? We're not sure. That is why Minister of Home Affairs is remain engaged to ensure that the investigative capacity of the Guyana police force and the resources become available instantly on capturing that boat and getting it here so we could get answers. First of all, we were concerned, was this piracy? Do we have any reports of piracy? Our neighbors in Suriname, who also conduct fishing expeditions, did a boat drift, lost its way, were they subject to anything of piracy? Trinidad, it was not expectation that Trinidad would be the route, but we still sought to alert to inquire because of the drift. It wasn't coming from that side, it was coming from the other side. Maybe Captain Flores could give, and Troy could give a plot about the westerly direction in which it was drifting and the speed with which it was drifting. Right. There's a map that they could show.
Let me refer you quickly to the chart. On the chart here, this is the initial position of the boat. Yesterday when we got the report from the tug, this is the position, the last sighting last night at 1953. So these are known positions. Now based on this, the direction and the speed of the current that was given to us, we projected it forward. This is the night clock. So it's basically moving in a westerly direction. The chart itself is a bit oriented, not exactly to north. This is north. So it's moving roughly aligned to the west. So it basically came like this, out of the ocean. It didn't come from shore. But give you an idea of the movement will be.
So then does the government plan to engage any of the relevant authorities, law enforcement or maritime in West Africa?
But we don't want to be alarmist. And I think our first effort today was to capture the boat, see if there's any identification so we know who we're talking to. Once we get that, we know where we had to go. Overnight, based upon reports that we will get tomorrow morning, very early again, the Guyana Defense Force is prepared at the break of day to conduct another flight. We have the assets on sea out there. The Coast Guard will be in the general area. Based upon the plotting that they showed me last night, by Wednesday midday, it was the expectation that if the boat continues to drift, at the same speed in the direction in which it was going, it would have been 31 nautical miles off of the Windy by Wednesday midday, which will be by tomorrow midday, following the same path. So we're not at loss altogether, but our search tomorrow, if we don't get it in the path that we were expecting, would genuinely widen the area. And of course, doing 5 hours of flight, you know, we would have gone wider in the circling checking. So if by tomorrow midday, that 31 miles, there's no visibility, we haven't captured the boat, I guess at that stage, the engagement at a higher level would have to be there to see how we could run the various searches and try to find clues as to where this boat may have originated from internationally, because it's all, anything that we say tonight is highly speculative. It is not conclusive because we don't have the boat. There is no marking on the boat from the photographs that you could even get a number, a registration number. There's not a flag. There is an orange kind of a cloth that is somewhere at the back, closer to where the engine of the boat is located, that don't have any kind of a real indication of what that is all about. It's a piece of clothing or what. So everything from what is known so far, and I need to say that this is not a boat that would have started sailing yesterday, because the reports that we got from the motor tug that side the boat, the bodies appear to be badly decomposed at the time of sighting, and there was a stench as well. So decomposition can take place in a yesterday or the day before activity. This could be an event that is unfolding over several days, coming from somewhere that we have to get all the international players to help to investigate where this is coming from.
The reason I asked Africa because you did kind of refer to that.
Yeah, so they're based upon the path, they're looking at the possibilities and so on.
David Kapana, could the weather influence the direction in which you guys have put up plotted?
Definitely, but generally offshore, the drift, as we call it, set, is generally in one direction, offshore. Closely inshore, it's really affected. So it will remain like that until we get close to inshore, then probably we'll be wrong. So we're not exactly, what I should say, correct to say it will exactly flow in exact west direction, but going in a code, depending on the wind and the direction of the wind and so on. But generally, the plot that we have based on the last known plots will generally be accurate as we project forward.
Minister, has there been any indication from the force vessel that spotted the boat as to how many persons they might have seen already?
I don't think they were able to report exactly, because they're seeing a vessel and trying to get photographs, and just like how they got photographs and sought to analyze from the boat, different figures have been thrown, 5, 7, 8, but it seems to be more than 5, not more than 10. It is within that, from looking at what we are seeing and not being sure. But like I said, that's not conclusive. It's highly speculative, because we have not yet captured that boat to be able to get all of the investigative material to be conclusive evidence.
Minister, you said on Monday tomorrow you will find the boat. You will engage international counterparts. And how long is the government planning to continue the search if you will be more long?
Well, by tomorrow midday, with our assets at sea and in the air, we would have been able to successfully patrol all of the airspace and the EEZ. So we will be able to know exactly that here, we saw something in our EEZ yesterday at 2 o'clock. It's no longer in our EEZ. Perhaps somebody else needs to get out in their EEZ, because we have to also be careful and sensitive that we don't cross certain lines at this particular time as well. So even with the instructions that our people are operating with, it's very delicate and sensitive, and we cannot be overzealous, because we also have national interest to preserve as well.
So our window by 390 News, any plans perhaps to engage satellite imagery or so to use that, you know, to locate?
All options are on the table, and when this press briefing is completed tonight and the emergency operation room becomes available for those think tanks and engagements and phone calls and briefings, all options are on the table, because as the minister responsible, I am distressed, deeply distressed, that I cannot tell the nation tonight where the boat is and who's on board. Minister Robeson Ben, I heard him very clearly last night when he said we have an obligation, even though these persons might be dead, because their bodies seem to be lifeless and decomposed. We are not the pathologists to pronounce people dead. To get them to their families, to bring closure wherever their families live and work. And you could be assured, sir, that the commitment of this administration, with its human faith and its belief in human beings and their own concerns, will work with every agency to get the details on this. We are doing everything we can do with our available assets, and we are exploring every other possibility for other partners with their assets to help us to get this to closure. Well, if there are no other questions, we want to thank you. We want to ask the people of Guyana to pray for the families of those who may have suffered ill fate at sea. Pray for us as we continue to get this done. And I'm concerned that I have several lives at sea all day today, since last night, and some that have departed since 5 o'clock this afternoon. We're spending night at sea in this search. We pray for the safety and well-being of all. And you will be aware as well, finding this boat and getting it attached is not like jumping in the river and tying a rope. It's a very delicate and sensitive issue. We have to ensure that all of our people that are getting out there have the necessary hazardous material suits, proper protective equipment, body bags, and all that is needed to ensure. We don't know if it's a disease. We don't know if it's murder. We don't know what it is. So all the necessary precautions have to be taken. So please, let's pray for the safety of all. Thank you very much.